The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. You know, a lot of the things that I hear about this pact is that the Soviet Union was just trying to buy time because Stalin had done a massive purge of the army in the 1930s and greatly weakened the army, as evidenced by the Winter War in Finland. They couldn't defeat Finland like they couldn't defeat Finland. Finland signed a white peace because they were starting to get whittled down, attrition, they were losing too many people. In a long war, Finland was not going to win. But in a short war, perhaps there would be some kind of intervention by the Western allies, like the French and the British. They would send troops. So that's why Stalin kind of kind of did the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, because he wanted to buy time to build up and restructure his army into a more formidable force. Because during the 1930s onwards, apparently Soviet Union did sign a pact with Czechoslovakia of collective defense, but that would require the Soviet Union to transit troops through Poland to come to Czechoslovakia's defense, which Poland refused to allow Soviet troops through their territory because they believed that the Soviet Union would never leave. They would never leave Poland once they came inside, which is technically kind of true. I mean, they wouldn't leave once they're in there. Like once you give them transit rights through your territory, they're never gonna leave ever. That's basically like one of the reasons why Poland didn't let them through their territory to defend Czechoslovakia. And then we all know what happened with the Munich conference. Like I'm just setting the stage for history of what was happening at the time. There was a Munich conference, and then what happened after that was Chamberlain. Remember when he had that little piece of paper and he was saying "peace of our time" and he was coming out of the plane when he was just talking to Hitler in Munich? And then, history always teaches us that things are not always as simple as they look. Um, and then there were also spheres of influence, secret protocols of the Nazi Soviet Pact. I don't know. I mean, was it really a pact or some kind of alliance? No, it was a non aggression pact with some kind of economical additions to it. The Soviets would give the Nazis economic cooperation like grain, oil, foodstuffs, all sorts of different economic food, all sorts of different items in exchange for machinery, blueprints, designs on new battleships, destroyers, just all sorts of different things were like it was more of an economic cooperation and a non-aggression pact. The non-aggression was mostly for the Soviet Union to build up their army in time to be able to fight the Nazis on an equal level or possibly beat them. And why did they? Okay, well, let's look at the spheres of influence. Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Those are the Baltic states. Poland, Romania, and I believe Hungary and Czechoslovakia didn't really exist anymore. It didn't exist anymore, bro. Czechoslovakia got completely swallowed up by the Poles, by the Germans, the Nazis, the Hungarians. Everybody came in and swooped in like some vultures to flipping pick on the carcass of Czechoslovakia. Like, it wasn't good. Like, the Czech Republic really got fucked over the biggest. Like, if when I'm reading that book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, like I'm just looking through all of the different things that happened to most of the countries, and Czechoslovakia undoubtedly, undisputedly got the biggest short end of the stick. 100%, bro. They got completely balkanized. There was independent Republic of Slovakia. It's the only thing that existed after that. Czech Republic was gone. Like, yeah, Prague was occupied by the Nazis, and they swallowed up the Sudetenland. And then the only thing left was Slovakia, and they took that over too. So my point is, like, throughout that time, the Soviets realized that they were also trying to make alliances with the British and the French, overtures to the British and French, so that they could gain an alliance against the Nazis. They were trying to do that prior to the invasion of Poland in 1939. Um, and then the British and French, they sent a delegation to Moscow that didn't even have the authority to they didn't even have the authority to agree on anything, to sign anything. They had no authority whatsoever. So obviously Stalin was like, okay, these guys are playing me around. They're not really serious. So we're gonna go over to the Nazis so we can get a better deal. So the goal was to create a buffer state, a buffer zone with the Baltics and the Eastern Poland and the Baltics, so that they could get ample time to prepare for an invasion. They would get ample warning as well, like an early warning system. I guess you could say the Baltic states, they were kind of some kind of early warning system for the Soviets. Like they occupied it because it's a strategic location and it's close to Leningrad as well. So if they didn't sign anything, you know what would have happened? They would have found themselves in a very, very precarious position because the Nazis would have taken over Poland and they would have taken over most of the Baltic states, with the exception of Estonia, perhaps. And they would be a stone's throw away from St. Petersburg, which was Leningrad at the time. Now it's St. Petersburg. But a stone's throw away from Leningrad. Like the Soviets couldn't accept that. Like that was something that was unacceptable for them, to have a border with the Nazis, which is why they occupied Eastern Poland. They occupied Eastern Poland because they needed a buffer zone between the Nazis and the Soviet Union. Am I saying this is a good thing? No, bad thing, of course. They invaded together. Not really. I mean, that's not entirely accurate. You know, from a surface level, yes, they invaded together, but not at the same time. The Soviets were hoping that the Nazis would weaken themselves greatly to a much weaker extent, because they had to fare with the French in their back, the British, the Polish. So they were hoping that the occupation and invasion of Poland by Germany, Nazi Germany, would take a lot longer than it did. Like they didn't expect Poland to fall in less than a month. They did not expect that, which is why they had to speed up their plans. And then actually, there was something really brilliant about what the Soviet government said. Um, they waited until the Warsaw, the Polish government in Warsaw collapsed, and there was no longer a Polish state. They used that as a casus belli to invade, and they said that they were protecting Russian-speaking people and Ukrainians from aggression from the Polish state, which no longer existed, by the way. So they could use that as a pre-context to invade. Like, I mean, the Soviets are fucking smart motherfuckers, but the thing is, like, I don't think they, obviously the caveat is like they didn't really plan enough for the invasion of June 22nd of 1941. But like, yeah, I mean, that kind of like throws a wrench in the screw, right? Like the Soviets, yeah, I mean, they did all that so that they could buy time to build their military up. Like, I mean, I think they kind of had to do that at some point. Like, what were their alternatives? Like, there were really not many alternatives to that course of action. And also, they occupied Bessarabia as well, which was a stone's throw away from the oil fields not in the Caucasus, but in Romania, which was the main supplier of oil after the invasion of the Soviet Union of Nazi Germany. So history always rhymes, huh? Does it always does? That's basically everything, really. I don't believe I left anything out. At that time, like the Soviets were just preparing, pretty much, like, And I find it so cynical the way that they said, "Oh, the Polish state no longer exists, so now we are just intervening to protect Ukrainians, Belarusians, and Russian-speaking Russians in eastern Poland." And they took over the oil fields in Galicia, which is another big thing that the Germans wanted to occupy. I believe they gave it right back. They didn't really want to have to occupy Poland because it would be such a harsh pain in the ass, like for the Russians to occupy Poland, because the Poles hate Russians like more than anything, more than the Nazis, more than the Germans. They hate Russians the most. Yeah, look at the 1922 War of Independence for Poland. They had to attack, and they got their independence. But yeah, the whole cynicism of the Soviet state at the time was it's quite interesting, huh?